The market at Huldred's Cross had been built in the shape of an apology, all low roofs, narrow lanes, and walls leaning away from both kingdoms at once. Human stone faced south, orc pine faced north. The bridge crossed a river too stubborn to belong to either side, and the town around it was grey, useful, and ashamed of nothing it could profit from. Caelan Voss had come for buckles, lamp oil, a sack of salt, and a new wheel pin for the handcart he had pushed since Lethmere. He intended to be gone before the afternoon fog climbed out of the ditches. The town did not invite lingering. It tolerated it for a fee. He was counting copper beneath a torn awning, while a tanner complained that glue cost more than honesty when the auctioneer's voice rose above the square. Fine northern stock, strong arms, young, teeth sound. Caelan's thumb stopped on a coin. The tanner kept speaking. Most people kept moving. 2 orc traders near the well looked towards the platform and then away with faces closed hard. On the raised planks, 3 men in leather jerkins held a woman in iron. She was orc, and she was not young in the way the auctioneer meant. Late 20s, perhaps, tall enough that the chain men had to pull down on the shackles to make her look contained. Her skin was vivid green under dirt and bruising. One tusk had cracked at the tip. Black hair shadowed half her face, but the eye he could see was steady. She did not plead. She did not perform submission for the comfort of buyers. She stood with the stillness of someone who had not yet run out of herself. Taken north of Cromere Road. The auctioneer said, "No clan mark recorded. Legal seizure under border writ. That writ is for raiders." Someone muttered. The auctioneer smiled. "Then bid accordingly." Caelan should have walked away. He had walked away from ugly things before, not because he believed them right, but because a man with 1 cart and no banner did not mend the world by stepping into every wound it opened. That thought had kept him alive and fed. It had also worn a groove in him. The first bid came from a mill owner with red hands, the second from a mine broker, the third from one of the slavers, a false bid to swell the room. The woman on the platform watched none of them. Her gaze had moved to the northern gate. The auctioneer lifted his hand. "She's not for sale." The market turned. For a heartbeat, Caelan did not know who had shouted. Then he saw his own hand raised, saw the tanner staring at him, saw the auctioneer's smile flatten into calculation. The mill owner said, "Everything on that stage is for sale." Caelan's mouth had gone dry. He had negotiated with knife smugglers, hungry toll guards, and widows who could skin a man over the price of soap. His voice, when it came again, was quieter. "What's her price?" The auctioneer looked him over and found no wealth worth flattering. More than buckles and salt. Caelan set his purse on the platform, then the second purse from inside his coat, then his stamped brass trade token, earned guarding a spice caravan through sleet and arrow fire. Last, after 1 breath he did not let anyone see, he unfastened the silver clasp from his cloak. "Keys," Caelan said. The chainman spat. "You buying or preaching?" "Keys first." No one in Huldred's Cross liked a scene once money had settled it. The auctioneer counted quickly. The keys came slower. When the shackles opened, the orc woman did not rub her wrists. She stepped down and stood before Caelan, close enough that he had to tilt his head. He had expected foolishly anything but silence. Her gaze went from his empty purse to the cart behind him, to the knife at his belt, to the northern gate. "Walk," she said. So he did. Quick note before we continue. If you want hotter and uncensored GL stories, I'll be sharing them on my Patreon page. These are the scenes I can't post here, so check the description for details. They left by the North Road, because the South Road would have been safer, and therefore watched. The woman walked 3 paces ahead until Huldred's Cross sank behind a ridge. She did not limp, though she wanted to. Blood had dried along her forearm where iron had cut deep, and 1 ankle was swollen above the shackle bruise. Each step landed evenly by force of will. "There's water in the blue skin," he said. She looked back, not at the skin but at his hands. Drink, then. I have. That is not an answer. No. She faced forward again. After another 100 paces she took the skin, drank twice, and returned it tied exactly as before. Not tightened, not loosened. A small announcement that she had touched nothing else. By dusk the road had become a track, and the track had become a suggestion under frost. Caelan chose a camp in the lee of a shale outcrop, where the wind split around them. He built the fire low. A high flame was an invitation. A small flame was a conversation between wood and need. The woman stood beyond the light while he unpacked oats, dried apple, cheese, and an iron pot. She watched the dark as if expecting it to argue. "I won't bind you," he said. "You have no chain." "I meant with words." Her face changed almost not at all. Humans bind more with words than iron. He accepted that because he could not deny it. Caelan Voss. She took longer than politeness required, but not so long as insult. Reva. Ashker. The second name landed differently. Caelan knew little of northern clans, but he knew Ashker the way a man knew a cliff from seeing broken carts below it. Stoneback. Chieftain's blood, perhaps. Near enough that Huldred's Cross would have priced her in fear if it had known. "Do you want me to ask?" he said. "No. Good." That earned him another look, not warmer but more exact. They ate from separate bowls. He set hers within reach and moved away before she took it. She did not thank him. He was relieved. Gratitude would have been a coin he had no right to collect. Afterward he boiled water and put a strip of clean linen beside it. "For your arm. I have had worse. That isn't a treatment. It is a fact. I sell thread and hinges. Facts don't close wounds." Silence held long enough for the fire to settle. Then Reva came into the light and sat on a stone, injured arm across her knee. She took the linen but not the small tin of salve until he opened it and set it between them. "Will it poison me?" "It tastes bad, but I don't recommend finding that out." She sniffed it. Comfrey, pine fat, honey, yarrow badly dried. "I'll add it to the list of ways this day has corrected me." She cleaned the wound without allowance for pain. When the cloth stuck, her breath stopped. That was all. Caelan pretended not to notice, and sharpened a twig with his belt knife for no reason until her breathing resumed. A man could sometimes offer mercy best by looking away. When she finished, she bound the arm in 2 neat turns and tucked the end with her teeth. "You were traveling alone," he said, and knew at once it had been the wrong thing. Her fingers stilled. "I don't need to know why." "No," she said. "You do not." Night gathered hard. Caelan laid his bedroll on one side of the fire and left the spare blanket on the other. Reva did not touch it. She sat with her back to the rock, one hand loose near the slaver's knife she had taken from the platform. He had said nothing because he preferred living. He woke before dawn to find she had taken the blanket after all. Not over herself. Under her injured ankle, folded to lift the swelling. Her head was bent forward, eyes closed. The knife lay across her thigh. She slept like a gate barred from inside. By morning the frost had silvered the grass, and his right wheel had begun its old complaint. Caelan knelt to reset the pin while Reva walked the edge of the track, reading signs invisible to him. She crouched once and pressed 2 fingers into mud stiff with cold. "Men came this way yesterday," she said. "From Huldred's? 3 horses, 1 mule. The mule dragged its left hind hoof." She stood and looked north. "Not ours." "Ours?" The word had escaped before he could weigh it. Reva looked at him. "Mine," she corrected. Then, after a pause with rough edges, "Not yours." "Understood." An hour later she left the road. Caelan stopped with both hands on the cart. "That track goes to Cromere. That track goes to men who know roads. And this goes where?" She glanced at the low country ahead. Brown reed beds and frozen wash channels. "Where the ground remembers water." "That sounds less comforting than I think you intended." I did not intend comfort. She took the front of the cart without asking, and shifted it toward a line of scrub willows. Step where I step. When I say stop, stop. If the wheel breaks, fix it quickly. That last one I might manage. You fixed it badly this morning. He opened his mouth, closed it. Fair. The marshland took them whole. Under Reva's direction, the cart crossed ground Kaelin would have mistrusted and avoided places that looked firm enough to dance on. When the right wheel sank, she put her shoulder beside his and helped heave it free. The effort opened the cut on her arm. Blood spotted the linen. Do not say the word, she warned. What word? Careful. I wasn't going to. You were thinking it. I think many foolish things. I try not to trouble others with all of them. She made a low sound in her throat. Later he would learn it was not exactly laughter. It served the same work. By the second afternoon, the sky lowered and the world narrowed to wet grass, iron cloud, and the ache between Kaelin's shoulders. He had begun to think they might reach the foothill pines when Reva stopped so suddenly he nearly ran the cart into her. 3 arrows stood in the mud at her feet. They had not been shot at her. They had been placed. Reva did not move. Her face emptied of everything but attention. From the slope above, shapes separated from stone and brush. Orcs in grey cloaks with horn bows and axes worn low. The largest descended first, a broad, older woman with hair shaved at the sides. She looked at Reva's torn clothes, bandaged arm, and bare wrists. Her jaw worked once. Reva lifted her chin. The older warrior struck her across the face. Kaelin moved before judgment. He did not reach the knife. He only took one step, and every bough on the slope turned toward him. Reva caught his wrist without looking. Her grip was iron, not a plea, a command. The older warrior spoke in Orcish, each word cut short. Reva answered in the same tongue. Kaelin understood nothing but the shape of shame in a language that did not soften it. Then the older woman stepped forward and pressed her forehead to Reva's, hard enough that both of them swayed. No one embraced. No one wept. Kaelin lowered his hand. A thin orc with a white bead threaded through one ear approached him. Age had bent her slightly, but not weakened her eyes. She carried no bow, only a staff marked with rings of black cord. You are the man, she said in common tongue. Kaelin did not ask which man. I am Kaelin Voss. You paid iron-break price before witnesses. I paid slavers. That is what I said. I don't own her. The elder's mouth twitched. No, if you did, you would already be dead. I'm glad we agree. A scar-mouthed scout made a brief sound. The elder tapped her staff once, and silence returned. I am Vethra Ashker, Lawmother of Stoneback. Hear me carefully, Kaelin Voss. Your tongue walks where wrong words break bones. You saw one taken. You broke the taking by price in a public market. You crossed road with her after. You did not sell, bind, bed, or abandon. Under old law, this makes Varrock. Reva closed her eyes. Kaelin felt the cold move under his coat. I don't know that word. Rescue bond, Vethra said. Not ownership. Obligation. The rescued may dissolve it when safe before clan fire, or confirm it when standing equal. Until then, you are answerable for what you began. I began unlocking a chain. Yes, that should end at freedom. Freedom without ground under it is another hole. Our dead learned this before your kingdom had walls. Men cut ropes and left captives in snow, saying, Go, you are free. Wolves thanked them. Kaelin looked at Reva. Her face had become a closed door, but the colour along her cheek was not from the blow now. I don't want a claim, he said. You have one. I didn't make it knowingly. Many things are made by the hand before the mind arrives. That was too true to argue with cleanly. The older warrior turned toward him. If you run, we bring you back. Kara, Reva said sharply. He should know. The warrior answered. Kaelin lifted both hands slightly. I have not run. Not yet. No, not yet. Vethra's staff touched the mud. You are not prisoner. You will be fed. Your goods will be carried if your cart fails. You may speak before the chieftain's fire when we reach winter camp. There, Riva Ashkur may cut the bond if she chooses." Everyone waited. Riva looked at him then, and for the first time since the market he saw something unguarded in her expression. It was not softness. It was calculation under pain. Choice had been handed back to her, wrapped in eyes, law, clan, father, witnesses. A choice could become another trap if too many hands held the edges. "Cut it now," he said quietly. Several orcs shifted. Vethra's gaze sharpened. Riva's nostrils flared. "You do not instruct me in my law." "No. If I cut it here, before road, before fire, before my father hears, they will say I feared being bound to a human more than I honored what was done. I don't need honor. That is because humans spend it badly." Kara made the throat sound that was almost laughter. Kaelin looked from Riva to the elder. "Then what do I do?" Vethra considered him. "Walk." So he walked again, no longer beside the woman he had freed, but behind the missing daughter of Chieftain Ashkur, under the eyes of Stoneback scouts studying the set of his shoulders as if treachery might be stored there. They took his cart apart before evening, not cruelly, efficiently. One scout lifted the salt sacks, another slung the lamp oil. Kara examined the repaired wheel pin, snorted and tossed it to Kaelin. "Bad work. I've been informed. By Riva. Yes. Then it was bad. I begin to see the pattern." Kara looked him over. "You speak like a man hiding a bruise." "I speak like a man trying not to acquire more." Her laughter startled crows out of a pine. Riva heard it from where she walked with Vethra and did not turn. That was the first small cruelty of the bond. Among her own people she should have been drawn into the center. Instead, Kaelin's presence bent the shape of everything. Women who might have touched her arm looked first at him. He did not blame them. He was a human man with slaver's keys still in his pocket because he had not found a place to throw them away. That night the clan made camp in a crescent of black pines. Their fires were buried in pits so heat rose and light did not travel far. Meat was seared on flat iron. Roots roasted in ash. A young orc boy set a bowl by Kaelin's knee and vanished before he could decide what courtesy applied. He watched the others. No one thanked the cooks. People touched the rim of the bowl before eating, knuckle to clay. Kaelin did the same. Across the fire, Kara saw and lifted one eyebrow, but did not mock him. Later, Vethra came carrying a small packet of herbs. "For the arm salve," she said. "Better yarrow. Yarrow that did not die sad in a sack. I'll retire my cabbage." The elder sat without asking permission. "Why did you pay?" He could have given a clean answer. Because no one else did. Because it was wrong. Because a man must draw a line somewhere or discover he has never had a spine. All true enough to be lies. "I heard myself shout," he said. "After that, the day had a shape. Not noble. No. Good. Noble men get tired when no one praises them." She stood with a soft grunt. "Do you know how to live among people who will not explain themselves for your comfort?" He glanced toward Riva's fire. "I can learn. Learn faster." The winter camp lay 3 days north, where foothills opened into a high basin protected by dark ridges. They did not take the main pass. Riva chose the way after standing with one hand on a larch trunk, and her face lifted to wind Kaelin barely felt. By noon, the party had shifted east through broken stone. Kaelin walked where he was told and tried not to be useless. He failed often. He held a tent pole wrong and dropped half a hide shelter into slush. He cut dried meat too thick for travel strips and too thin for stew. He offered a whetstone with the wrong hand and received a stare so flat that Kara had to take the stone and put it in his other palm. "Left hand offers to kin," she said. "I didn't know." "Now you do." "Does the right hand offer to enemies?" "The right hand offers to those who might become either. Convenient. Honest." Kara decided he was amusing, and maintained the decision like a weapon. She called him Little Cart, though his cart had been dismantled. When he objected, she looked him from boots to hair and said, "For a cart, no." The name spread by evening. Riva did not use it. Their conversations narrowed to necessity. "The stones are loose. Your packstrap is twisted. Do not drink there." Once, when a child slipped on a wet slope and Kalen caught him, Riva checked the boy's wrist. She did not praise. She nodded once. It stayed with him longer than praise would have. At night, she slept within the ring of her people, but somehow apart from it. Kalen saw her outline beyond the far embers, knees drawn up, face turned toward the invisible north. She was home, and not home in the same breath. He knew something about that. Years before, he had believed he would build a shop, and a name that meant fair weight. A patron defaulted. A magistrate smiled. A warehouse changed hands on paper. Nothing burned. No one died. The world simply informed him that he had mistaken decency for protection. Since then, he had travelled alone because a handcart could not betray him or expect him to become cheerful. He did not tell Riva this. She did not tell him why she had been alone on Cromere Road. Their silences recognized each other without shaking hands. On the last day of travel, snow began. It fell politely at first, then thickened until trees became suggestions. Riva moved to the front. The path vanished to Kalen's eyes, but she walked as if following a thread under the snow, changing direction by signs he could not see. At a frozen stream, Riva knelt and listened to the ice. "Bad?" she said. Cora crouched beside her. "Looks thick. Sounds hungry." They crossed farther upstream, where willow roots gripped both banks. When Kalen's turn came, Riva called, "Walk flat-footed. I know how to cross ice." "No, you know how you have not died yet." He crossed flat-footed. The winter camp appeared near dusk, not as the crude sprawl some human part of him had expected, but as a settlement fitted to the basin with the intelligence of long practice. Timber halls crouched under sod roofs. Smoke rose through stone vents. Channels cut for meltwater ran between drying racks and upright stones blackened by age. Children saw them first and ran shouting. Adults followed more slowly. Tools were set down. Doors opened. The camp did not burst into joy. It drew breath and held it. A horn sounded from the largest hall. Riva stopped at the basin's edge. For one moment, surrounded and alone, she looked like someone facing a door she had once slammed, and now had to open with bleeding hands. A man came out wearing no crown and needing none. Chieftain Ashker was older than Kalen expected, and larger than rumor allowed. His hair was iron grey, braided with bone and copper. One tusk had been capped in black horn. His left hand was missing 2 fingers. He walked without hurry through the falling snow, while the camp arranged itself around his silence. Riva went to one knee. The sight unsettled Kalen more than any blow could have. She bent not in submission but in acknowledgement of weight. Her father stopped before her. For several breaths he did nothing. Then he put his maimed hand on the crown of her head. The camp exhaled. He spoke one word in Orcish. Riva answered with 3. His hand tightened once. Then he looked at Kalen. "You paid for my daughter," he said in common. Kalen felt every possible answer line up in his mouth, each wrong in a different way. He chose the one with least decoration. "I paid the men holding her chain." "Why?" The elder had asked as law. The father asked as wound. "I don't know a clean answer." "Then give a dirty one." Kalen kept his hands still. "I was leaving. I saw her standing there as if the whole market had mistaken what sort of creature it had caught. I shouted before I thought. Then I had to become the man who had shouted." Snow ticked softly against leather and wool. Ashker looked at his daughter. "Is this true?" Riva rose. "It is true enough. That is not the same." "No." "Did he touch you by force?" "No." "Did he bind you?" "No." "Did he ask your clan before speaking your name?" "No." Kalen closed his eyes briefly. That had been a mistake he had not known how to avoid. Riva continued. I gave first name. He did not press for second. I gave it. Ashker's eyes returned to Kalen. You carry a bond made in ignorance. Ignorance does not make a load lighter. I'm learning that. Will you stand under Stoneback Roof until solstice law is spoken? Kalen looked at Riva. No one had asked him what he wanted since the market. Perhaps that was fair. He had taken a step into another people's law. If Riva wants me gone, he said, I go. Ashker's expression darkened. You answer me with her choice. It seems the only honest answer I have. Something passed across the chieftain's face too quickly to name. Riva spoke without turning. He may stay. It was not warm. It was not invitation. It was, unmistakably, choice. A place was made for Kalen in a longhouse that smelled of smoke, cedar, cured leather, and bodies living through winter without apology. Roof beams were carved with old hunts and older storms. Sleeping platforms held family tokens, tools, belts, herbs, and children's carvings. He was given a space near the door, a fur, and a wooden cup mended with resin. No one said welcome. The next morning, a girl of perhaps 12 dropped kindling at his feet and pointed toward the woodpile. Little cart carries. Kalen looked at Kara, who was sharpening an axe nearby with suspicious innocence. Does Little Cart get breakfast? The girl considered this as if negotiating between clans. If Little Cart does not freeze first. He carried wood. Work was how the camp decided what he was. No one asked about his character. They handed him loads and watched how he took correction. He mended hinges, braced a broken sled runner, and repaired a child's bone whistle. In exchange, he learned that orc knots were unforgiving, and that refusing food twice meant refusing relationship. He also learned that Riva was harder to find in a place built around her. She moved through the winter camp as a person both recovered and accused. Some greeted her with touches to the shoulder or brow. Others watched the cracked tusk and bandaged arm and said nothing. Among Stoneback, shame was set in the middle of the floor until someone found its shape with their feet. Riva did not flinch from this. That was not the same as being untouched. She drilled with the warriors despite Vethra's disapproval. Her left arm was slower, but when Kara knocked the practice spear from her hand, Riva changed stance and drove her shoulder into Kara's chest hard enough to make the watching youths shout. Kara landed in snow and laughed at the sky. Kalen, carrying frozen turnips, looked away before Riva could catch him staring. She caught him anyway. That evening she came to the smokehouse while he was setting a peg. You hold the awl too close to the tip, she said. I've held awls since I was 9. You have held them wrong for a long time. He moved his fingers back. The angle improved. Annoying. Truth often is. You and Kara share a school of comfort. Kara uses more teeth. He glanced up. There it was again. Nearly humor. Nearly gone. How is your arm? He asked. Her expression closed. I know. Bad question. It heals. That is the answer I expected. Then why ask? Because he had noticed her favoring it when she thought no one watched. Because the bandage was always tied tighter than necessary, as if pain could be ordered into obedience. He set the awl down. Habit? Break it. I'll try. She looked at the hinge. This is good work. The words were plain and left quickly. She was gone before he could ruin them with gratitude. Snow held the camp for several days. Life tightened but did not pause. Hides were scraped, blades were oiled. Children learned sums with black stones. Kalen counted trade goods, repaired what broke, and learned the camp's order. Food to children first, then elders, then those going out on watch. Disputes settled by listeners who knew the work, not by rank alone. Kalen began, without noticing the hour it happened, to stop thinking of the longhouse as shelter and think of it as the place where his cup was. On the 7th morning, Riva paused by the water channel with 2 buckets in hand. Her head turned south. "What is it?" Kaelin asked from the woodpile. She set the buckets down. "Iron on the lower pass." He listened and heard nothing. A moment later, a horn sounded from the ridge. Not alarm, exactly. Warning. The camp changed shape. Children vanished indoors. Warriors took positions among halls, fences, and stacked timber. From a low ridge, Kaelin and Reva saw 30 human soldiers and riders under a blue and white pennant. Beside the captain, bound by rope, was one of the stone-back scouts sent south at dawn. "Alive," Kaelin said. "For now." The captain halted below the outer stones and called up in common. "By authority of Highford Border Command, we seek stolen property removed unlawfully from Huldred's Cross Market and the human accomplice travelling with it. Produce both, and no further action will be taken." The basin went still. "Property," Reva said. He had no answer that would not insult the size of the word. Ashka stepped into the open below. "No stolen property here." The captain looked relieved to have someone speaking common. Relief made men careless. "Chieftain Ashka, this need not become a border matter. We pursue a lawful writ. An orc female was sold under seizure papers. A human trader interfered and removed her without confirmation." Kaelin heard the shape of it. The auctioneer, stung by lost coin or frightened by discovering whom he had sold, had dressed revenge in paperwork and handed it to Highford. The soldiers likely believed half of what they carried. That made them more dangerous, not less. Reva's hand closed around her spear. Her eyes moved across slope, timber stacks, frozen channel. She was reading the basin the way she had read marsh and ice. "If they enter, archers break them," she said. "Then blood debt begins. You want no battle. I want many things. I choose from what remains." He looked at her and understood what she was asking without asking. "I can talk to him. He wants you. He thinks he wants a criminal. I can disappoint him. That is likely. Your confidence is a lantern. If you need to run, take the wash behind the old cedar," she said. "It curves west. I thought humans who run are brought back. That was before Highford." There, a piece of information shared before pride could forbid it. Kaelin went down the slope with empty hands raised. Half the Highford line shifted crossbows toward him. He recognized tired horses, cold fingers, men hungry enough to hate whoever delayed breakfast. "I'm Kaelin Voss." "You admit it," the captain said. "I admit my name. It saves time. You will come with us to Huldred's Cross." "I'd prefer not to." That was not a request. I assumed requests usually wear better boots. The captain's face tightened. Kaelin let his gaze drop to the leather tube in the captain's saddlebag. "You have a writ, signed by Magistrate Bellin?" "By his clerk under seal. Bellin's dead." The line stirred. The captain recovered. "The seal stands." "Bellin died 13 days ago. Fever in Highford. His clerk may stamp tax notices until appointment, but border seizure writs require a living magistrate or a garrison commander's countersign." "You are a trader, not a jurist." "I carried contracts for Mercer's caravans 6 years. Half of guarding cargo is knowing which paper lets a board officer steal it. Arrest me under a dead man's writ on clan winter ground, and you create a dispute your commander will not thank you for. Try to take Ashker's daughter as property, and you create a war he will deny authorizing." The captain's gaze flicked toward Reva standing on the ridge. Recognition arrived poorly. "Daughter?" he said. "Yes." The word settled like a dropped blade. Kaelin pressed before pride could harden the man. "Release the scout. Mark the writ contested. Return for proper parley with a living seal and a law speaker from both sides. No one loses face. No one freezes in a ditch over a clerk's bad afternoon." For a moment it nearly worked. Then a young soldier at the rear, frightened by the archers or eager to be brave, lifted his crossbow toward Reva. The bound scout dropped as Reva's spear left her hand. It did not strike the soldier. It struck the crossbow, splitting the stock before the bolt loosed. Horses screamed. An arrow from the ridge buried itself in the ground before the captain's mount, close enough to spray snow across its chest. Kalen moved toward the scout and cut the wrist rope with his belt knife. "Ravine," he said, hoping urgency translated if language did not. The scout ran. A hand seized Kalen's coat. He twisted like a man who had learned in caravan ambushes that the first rule was to stay on his feet. The soldier's glove slipped. Kalen drove an elbow backward, hit Mail, regretted it instantly, and ran for the West Wash because pride had less value than breathing. Reva reached him at the mouth of the gully. "This way," I had gathered. "Faster. I'm saving my elegance." A bolt struck the cedar behind them like a door slammed by the world. Kalen stopped being funny and ran. They crouched behind dead reeds while shouting rose and fell beyond the ridge. Reva's spear was gone. She had a knife in her right hand and her left arm pressed tight against her side. "Your arm," he whispered. "Later means later. You always this precise? You always talk when hiding? Yes. Break it." He leaned back against frozen earth, breath burning. A week ago he had owned a cart. Now he was hiding in a ditch with the daughter of the most feared chieftain in the north, while a border patrol debated whether paperwork was worth dying over. Reva looked at him. "Why is your face doing that?" "I'm realizing I should have charged more for my trade token." For 1 second she only stared. Then she made the throat sound, very low. It shook once through her shoulders and was gone. It was enough. The standoff ended without a dead man, which made it a triumph of restraint no bard would ever sing properly. The captain withdrew after Vethra, Ashker, and Kalen found enough defects in the writ to save everyone's pride. Only when the last pennant dipped beyond the ridge did the camp move again. That night, embers from each longhouse were brought in clay cups to feed one common flame. It was not a celebration. It was a reckoning with heat. Kalen sat on a log while Vethra wrapped his elbow in a poultice that smelled worse than old cabbage and much more authoritative. "You cut rope," she said. "It seemed attached to the wrong thing. You also insulted a captain's boots." They were poor boots. Next time insult his hat. Boots make men defensive. Kara stood nearby with Reva's recovered spear. "Little cart runs badly." Little cart survived. Because Reva runs well. "I'm aware." Reva, letting a healer rebind her arm at the edge of the fire pit, glanced toward him. The look was brief, but not distant. Something had shifted in the gully, in the moment of shared breath and almost laughter. Not enough to name. Enough to make naming dangerous. Later, after the children had been bullied into beds, Kalen sat outside the longhouse, turning the slaver's keys over in his hand. He had carried them too long. The iron was ugly and ordinary. That offended him. A thing capable of closing around a wrist should have been marked by its own shame. Reva stood beside him. "Why keep them?" "I don't know where to put them." "In fire." "I thought of that. But the iron remains." She sat on the opposite end of the stone, leaving space between them. "Bury them under the latrine." He looked at her. Her face was solemn. "That is a practical suggestion." "Yes." A dignified one. "No?" He folded the keys into his palm. "Tomorrow, then." For a while they watched smoke unravel from the covered fire pit. Without the public gaze of the clan fixed on her, exhaustion showed in the angle of Reva's neck. "You could have let them take me," Kalen said. "Yes. I appreciate the restraint. That is thanks. Is it? In your mouth?" He considered that. "What would it be in yours?" She did not answer quickly. "If an act is necessary, thanks make it small." Cutting a rope was necessary. Yes. Breaking the crossbow. Yes. Pulling me over the rock. Her gaze stayed on the fire pit. Unfortunately. He smiled before he could stop himself. She saw it and looked away, which was not the same as disapproval. "I was alone because I chose badly," she said. He made himself remain still. My father sent traders south with an escort. I wanted to prove I could read the lower roads better than the old guides. I left before dawn. No guard, no witness. There was fog in the Cut Valley. Men had nets weighted with chain. Her hand lay flat on her knee. I woke under a cart. I had bitten one man badly enough that they gagged me. That is all. That was not all. It was simply the edge of what she could set down between them. Kaelin looked at the keys. A bad choice isn't the same as deserving what follows. I know this. He believed she did. He also heard that knowledge had not yet become shelter. When I lost my first shop, he said, surprising himself, I kept the key for a year. There was no door for it anymore. New owner changed the lock, still kept it, as if the right day would come and the room would remember me. Did it? No, I threw it in a river. Did the river give it back? Not yet. She looked forward again. Good river. Neither asked the other to say more. That was why more had been said. The days that followed did not soften easily, but they made room. Kaelin buried the slaver's keys beneath the latrine trench, while Kara offered solemn advice about depth. Riva did not attend. Later he found the place marked by 3 small stones. Ugly things, he thought, deserved to be put somewhere specific. He learned more words: fire, water, enough, wrong, move. The Orc word for human changed with tone, which seemed unfair but accurate. Riva corrected his pronunciation without mercy. By the second week, Kaelin could say good morning in a way that made only half the Longhouse laugh. Ashker watched him. The chieftain did not summon him at first. He observed from distances that still felt near. When Kaelin mended a sled, or counted stores, or accepted a bowl with the proper hand, Ashker's eyes rested on him a moment longer than comfort allowed. Kaelin tried not to perform. Trying not to perform was itself a performance, if a man was vain about it, so he gave up and worked. One afternoon, Ashker found him repairing a cracked pack frame. Walk. It was apparently a word the whole family favoured. They climbed to a ridge where black pines leaned east under old wind. From there, the winter camp looked less like a camp and more like a thought made practical. Smoke, roofs, packed paths, the copper fire cover glinting dull in weak sun. Ashker stacked cedar beneath an overhang. Kaelin helped because work was in front of him. For some time, they built a wood cache without speaking. My daughter did not cut the bond, Ashker said. No. Do you know why? I have guesses. None are mine to trust. Say one. If she cut it at once, Kaelin said, people might think the bond shamed her more than the chain. Another. She may not want the law decided while everyone is looking at the wound instead of her. Another. Kaelin looked down at the camp. Riva crossed between halls with a child on one hip and a spear in the other hand, because Stoneback saw no contradiction there. She likes having choices, he said, even hard ones, especially those. Ashker's silence changed. When Riva was small, she climbed the North Watchstone because her brother said her legs were too short. Snow began. We told her to come down. She said she would when the stone admitted she had won. Did it? Her mother climbed up with a blanket and no permission from me. By dawn, both were angry at the stone. The image settled in Kaelin's chest. Small Riva stubborn in freezing dark, a mother bringing warmth without surrender, a father below learning that love could not always climb after what it feared to lose. Varakdan was made by frightened ancestors, Ashker said. It does not speak clearly because fear does not. I would dissolve it if I could. Would you? For her freedom, yes. That is not what I asked. Kaelin thought of Riva in the market, Riva listening to ice, Riva's almost laugh in the gully, Riva telling him about fog and nets because she had decided he could carry the knowledge without mishandling it. I don't know, he said. Ashker seemed satisfied by the damage honesty did. At solstice before the central fire, she may cut the bond. You will be given safe passage and a debt token. I don't need repayment. You will take it if offered. Refusing debt is stealing the right to settle it. And if she does not cut it, then both stand, not as chain, as oath. She did not choose the beginning. No, that is why the middle matters. Kaelin set the last piece of cedar in place. What do you want from me? Do not make yourself small so she feels large. Do not make yourself noble so she owes you warmth. Do not confuse patience with absence. The words landed one by one. They returned before dusk. At the basin edge, Ashker stopped him with one hand. If you had sold her again, I would have fed you to the ridge dogs in pieces small enough to teach patience. Kaelin swallowed. I assumed something like that. If you had used the bond to touch what was not freely given, Vethra would have argued for law. That sounds better than dogs. She argues slowly. Ah? Ashker looked at him. You did neither. So now we learn what you did do. It was the closest thing to mercy Kaelin expected from him. The storm came as promised and sealed the camp under hard weather. Riva took Kaelin beyond the upper sheds to show him how to cut snow blocks for windbreaks. Angle inward, she said. If you stack straight, wind pushes. If you lean, wind climbs. He adjusted the block. Too much? He adjusted again. Now it falls. He set the block down and looked at her. I begin to suspect Stoneback teaching is mostly naming failure until shame improves the student. Yes, at least it's efficient. No, efficient teaching would hit you with the block. He laughed. It came out before he could tame it. Riva froze, not offended, but startled in a way that reminded him she had not heard him laugh before. He had not heard it much himself. That was not at you, he said. I know. I don't laugh often. I know. Of course she did. She read landscape. People were only more troublesome terrain. That evening, with the shutters barred, Kaelin carved a handle for the storekeeper's scoop, while Riva mended a child's cloak. Later she came to sit near him. Not beside him. Nearer than before. Your scoop handle is ugly, she said. It will be strong. Ugly things often say this. He turned it in his hand. Your stitches are crooked. My stitches hold. Crooked things often say this. Her mouth pressed flat. The almost laugh did not come, but he saw where it would have. Do you miss roads? She asked. Sometimes. What is there to miss? The next place can still be anything before you reach it. That sounds like a way to love disappointment. It might be. She tied off a thread with her teeth. I missed the upper ridges when I was taken. There is a place where wind comes through 3 cuts at once. If you stand badly, it knocks you sideways. If you stand well, you can hear weather a day away. Will you show me? When your boots stop lying, she said. He nodded, as if this were a clear condition. I'll speak with them. At the sleeping platforms, she paused. Kaelin, she said. It was the first time she had used his name since the first fire. She pronounced it carefully, not softened, not claimed. Simply placed. Do not let Kara teach you the word she says means breakfast. I suspected it didn't. It means goat bladder. I suspected worse. It can mean worse, with tone. Then she went to her bed, and he sat awake with the ugly scoop handle in his hands, feeling foolishly as if he had been entrusted with something finer. The solstice approached through cold, clear days. Preparations began without announcement. The central stones were scrubbed with sand. Copper ornaments were polished. Children practiced carrying ember cups with mortal seriousness. Whenever Kaelin passed, conversation did not stop, but it altered course. The bond had become a room everyone knew they were inside. Riva withdrew as the day neared. Not completely. She still corrected his words, still worked beside others, still read weather from ridge and smoke. But some door in her had narrowed. Kaelin saw it in how she stood at the edge of gatherings and avoided the central fire pit after dark. He did not follow. He wanted to. That was reason enough not to. Instead, he made things. A peg for the smokehouse, a latch for a child's toy chest, brass rings to replace the cracked bone ones on Vethra's law staff, which she accepted with the suspicious air of someone being offered a compliment in disguise. For Riva, he made nothing. Everything he imagined became too much or too little in the hand. On the evening before the solstice, he could not sleep. The longhouse was full of slow breathing and the occasional crack of settling timber. He stepped outside, and the cold took him by the teeth. The camp lay blue and still. Above, the sky had cleared so fiercely that stars seemed hammered into it. Riva stood by the covered central fire pit. He nearly retreated, but she had heard him. Of course she had. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "I did not ask." "No." She wore a heavy cloak, clasped at her throat with the stone disc carved like a mountain spine, the one he had seen every day since the basin. Her breath made a pale cloud and vanished. They stood on opposite sides of the copper cover. It looked like a shield laid over a sleeping sun. "Vethra instructed me not to apologize tomorrow if you cut the bond," he said. That was kind of her. "I'm beginning to think so. She told me not to mistake anger for choice. That sounds like Vethra. She told my father not to breathe like a war drum. Will he obey? No. Wise not to expect miracles." Riva's shoulders moved with a quiet breath. "I hated you at first." The words were not thrown. They were placed carefully, edge outward. "I assumed." "No, you assumed I hated the chain, the men, the market. I did. But I hated you because you stood where my choice should have been. You opened the lock, and still I was following a man away from a place where men had sold me." Kaelin let the words do what they needed. "Yes. I wanted you to demand thanks so I could refuse. I wanted you to touch my arm so I could strike you. I wanted you to be simple. I've disappointed better people." She looked at him. "Sorry," he said. "Vethra told me not to be clever near the fire. It leaks." This time the almost laugh arrived as a breath through her nose, brief and real. "I do not hate you now," she said. A lesser man might have reached for that sentence until it tore. Kaelin kept his hands at his sides. "I'm glad," he said, then grimaced. "That may be thanks." "It may be allowed. Generous. No, precise." The first line of dawn loosened behind the eastern ridge. Riva looked toward it, and in that pale light the cracked tusk, the scar, the proud, hard line of her profile all seemed less like damage and more like weathering on stone that had not yielded. "If I cut the bond," she said, "you go. Yes. If I confirm it, you stay. If that is what you choose." Her jaw tightened. "Want is not one thing. No. I want my life before the road. I want the men who took me to know my name while they choke on it. I want my father to stop looking at me as if I am a blade returned with a crack in it. I want no law to decide the shape of my door, my bed, my name beside another's." She stopped. The cold held the rest for her. "And I want you not to leave because leaving is easy." Kaelin's chest hurt in a quiet, inconvenient way. "It isn't. For you? No." She turned fully toward him. "Good." Dawn widened. "I can't give you your life before the road," he said. "I did not ask you." "I know, I'm saying it so I don't pretend otherwise." She studied him. "What can you give?" He thought of coin gone on a market platform, a cart with bad wheels, hands that knew hinges better than law, a history of leaving before needing to ask whether anyone wanted him to stay. Not much, perhaps enough if carried honestly. "Standing," he said. "When asked, silence when not. Work that holds if I know how, the truth when I don't." Riva's gaze dropped to his hands, then rose. "That is not a small list." "It feels small." "Then learn wait." Footsteps sounded behind them. A child sent to fetch water stopped dead at the sight of them, then backed away with exaggerated care. Riva watched the child go and shook her head once. "By breakfast, Kara will know." Kaelin said. "By breakfast, Kara already knows." This was probably true. Riva reached to her throat and unfastened the stone clasp. Without it, the cloak loosened around her shoulders. She held the disc in her palm for a moment. In the paling light, Kaelin saw that the carved mountain spine was worn smooth at the edges by years of touch. "My mother's ridgestone," she said. He did not move. She wore it when she crossed the three-cut pass in winter. My father says she carried weather in her teeth and arguments in both hands. It sounds as if he admired both. He feared both. That is not different enough to matter. Riva stepped around the copper cover and held the clasp out to him. Kaelin looked at the stone, then at her. "I can't take that. You can hold it. For how long? Until I ask it back." The camp remained still around them, the fire unlit, the law unspoken, the solstice waiting below the ridge of day. This was not the ceremony. No elder asked. No chieftain judged. No one translated the act into obligation and placed it where everyone could see. That was why it struck him harder. His hand rose slowly. He did not touch her fingers when he took it, though the space between them seemed thinner than breath. The stone was warm from her throat. "I don't know what this means," he said. "Yes, that is not an answer. It is the only true one." He closed his hand around the ridgestone. "I'll keep it safe." "No." Riva's eyes held his, steady as they had been in the market and different in every other way. "Keep it near. Safe things are often far away." Below them, the winter camp began to stir. A door opened. Somewhere Kara's laugh rolled out, rough as a log splitting. Smoke rose from the first hearth and went straight into the cold. The solstice had not yet come, but it was coming. So was the law fire, the question, the choice. Riva looked toward the upper ridges. "Your boots still lie." "I know. The path will punish them." I assumed. She took a strip of leather from her belt and held it out. "Wrap the left sole before we climb." "We're climbing? There is a place where wind comes through 3 cuts at once." He waited. "If you stand badly," she said, "it knocks you sideways." "And if I stand well?" Her gaze shifted to him. "Then you hear what is coming." Kaelin took the leather. Their fingers touched this time. Briefly. Not by accident, not by announcement. He understood very little, still. But he understood enough not to thank her. Instead, he touched 2 fingers to the ridgestone in his palm, the way one touched the rim of a bowl before accepting what had been given. Riva saw. Her shoulders eased by a measure so small that only a man learning to watch weather might have noticed. "Better," she said. It was not a promise. It was not a declaration. It was a path marked under new snow, visible only from the right angle. For that morning, with the camp waking below them and the upper ridges waiting, it was enough.